Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Colon with the Boys podcast. My name is Asen, here with my co-host Nathan.
What's up?
Our Discord's finally up, so head on over to our website to get the link to that so you can hang in game with us, maybe the listeners, and some of the guests from the show, if they ever want to grant us that presence there. Also, if you guys liked episode 1, 4, and 6 with Lars Clutch and the Pixel Pups, they actually have started a podcast called The Broodcast. That's BROOD cast. So check them out. It's pretty awesome. It's about gaming news, things like that. So definitely check them out. I just wanted to give them a shout out. And also thanks for the support, guys, and keep telling your friends to keep checking us out and helping us out. It's been awesome. So keep doing that for us. Today we have a more serious episode comparatively to our past. We invited on Aaron from the Generation Y podcast, which covers true crime murders, mysteries, and cases, things like that. Aaron was nice enough to grant us with his presence, and he's actually one of the nicest guys I've ever spoken with. So I think Nathan can attest to that. He's given us a lot of patience.
Yeah, we had we actually had a recording before this one, and we had some issues with the audio that we recorded, and he was nice enough to be like, yeah, if you guys can't put together a good enough episode out of that one, he's like, I don't have a problem coming back and redoing it again. So that was pretty awesome. So if he's listening to this, big thanks to you for that, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, on the episode, we talk about the Second Amendment. We talk about gun control, school shootings, and true crime. So strap in for those controversial topics and crack open a cold one. So you do the Generation Y podcast, which is a true crime podcast that I love. So thank you for doing that. But what just for the listeners, what is true crime? Can you kind of explain it to them? Because sometimes I tell people I listen to true crime podcasts, and they're like, "What is that?" And they have no idea. They think I watch CSI or something like that.
Well, and that's a good way to reference it, is you could say, you watch some scripted show about fake crimes, and I watch unscripted shows about real crimes, which is true crime.
Yeah, true crime, false crime. Like I don't get why they don't get it, Yeah, like CSI, I've never actually, I mean, I have sat down and watched it, but I haven't been interested in it. I don't know if it's because I know it's fiction or if it just doesn't catch my interest, but man, does true crime catch my interest because, while you're listening to a Generation Y episode, it's just engaging. You kind of put yourself in the situation as if either you were a part of it or you were, on the outside looking in as if you knew what was going on. When you actually, write out your episodes, do you get that feeling? Do you get that immersed into a case?
What do you mean by write out?
Well, I mean, like when you
research.
Yeah, when you're doing the research on a case, do you guys get like super immersed into the case where you kind of put yourself in the shoes of either the victim or the killer, maybe in some cases? Do you ever do something like that?
I think we try to put ourselves in the place where, at least to where we're satisfied we know what happened, and we don't always get there, but we certainly try. And on the latest episode that we've been researching, I don't think we've exchanged this many calls before. We're really getting into it and trying to solve it. A difficult case, but it's also a really big case. So I think if people had already solved it, I think we'd have heard that by now.
Yeah, are you talking about like the newest one that just came out, or are you talking about one that's just not out to like the listeners yet?
We're talking about the one that will be out. We're recording this on March 12th, so it'd be the following Sunday. So it'll be a new one.
Okay. Because I just listened to the I think it was Lee Ochi.
Leochi.
That one was really interesting because that one kind of went along that same path that you just said. There wasn't really a conclusion in a way. Um, from what I understood, right? They never found her body.
Well, real quick, Leochi was a 13-year-old girl. She lived with her mother. Her dad was serving in the military, and her parents were divorced. But her mother swears that her daughter was afraid of storms. And because it was sort of like the fallout from Hurricane Andrew, this is back in 1992 in Mississippi, there were a lot of storms. Her daughter slept with her the night before. And then for the very first time, she decided to go to work and leave her daughter at home alone, even though mother was just 5 minutes away. And then while she's at work, she gets nervous and calls home. Her daughter doesn't answer. So she flies home, basically, 15-minute drive, and she finds blood in the house.
Hmm.
Very short, her daughter cannot be found even to this day.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like when I listened to that episode, I was like, the whole time you guys were kind of alluding to it as well, but I do think that I think Vicky was the mother's name. Is that right?
Yes, Vicky Yarborough.
Yeah, she to me, that's who I mean, I guess point the finger at. Um, just seems very suspicious being 5 minutes away from her daughter, at work. And yeah, people saw her at work, but who knows when this blood, was spilled. No one actually knows because you guys were talking about, depending on the amount of blood, it could stay in liquid form for a very long time. Um, so they can't pinpoint the time that it was spilled.
Let's ask Nathan this. So let's just say, for the sake of this story here,
Mm-hmm.
that Vicky's your ex,
Okay.
military, and your ex calls you and says, your daughter ran away.
Mm-hmm.
And then days later, she calls you again and says, actually, there was blood in the house.
And I have to decide whether she's lying to me. Like, is that what I'm trying to figure out?
Well, no, like
Why would she tell you that in the first place, that his daughter ran away, when there was a puddle of blood outside of her room and blood spatter on the door frame?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, especially if it was my ex. Like, there's a reason why they split up. I don't know, the relationship issues or whatever they had, but most of the time, whenever you go your separate ways, you're not, jiving with your ex spouse. So if my wife called me, ex-wife called me, told me my daughter ran away, and then 2 days later called and told me that she actually disappeared and there was blood all over the floor, I would be a little bit suspicious. Like like automatically I would just place the blame on her, just coming from me as a person. But I mean, can coroners not look at blood and tell by like the coagulation of how long it was sitting there? I thought they could do that, almost like looking at a time of death type thing.
It's on the conditions. And in this case, they said that it hadn't coagulated yet. So they felt like it was relatively fresh, but heck, that could have been an hour, could have been 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, this was in 1992. They didn't have DNA,
Okay.
or it wasn't as good. I don't know what kind of coagulation like
Testing
technology they had, or
equipment, yeah.
testing. Yeah, I don't know what they could tell at that point in time.
Well, they
Yeah.
tested the blood type.
Yeah,
And it matched to the girl, the one that went missing.
It did match her blood type.
Yeah, from the information you've given me, I haven't listened to the case. I don't know anything about it, but sounds like the mom's guilty to me. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a very good juror. Like, I'm glad I've never been selected for jury duty, because I'd go in, sit down in the courtroom. They'd come up like, this guy's on trial for murder. He murdered him. I'd be like, yep, he's guilty. Get him out of here.
You're like, time for lunch.
You'd be one of those guys. You wouldn't even get picked. You'd like go in for jury selection, and they'd be like, "Oh, this guy doesn't."
He doesn't care, dude.
It's like, just give me a 60-second summary, and I'll give you a 10-second decision.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
Just let me look at him. Judge the book by his cover.
Thinking about it though, being selected for jury duty, I know it's something anyone, it can happen to anyone, but I feel like if I were to be picked for jury duty on a big murder case like that, part of me would want to do that. Part of me would want to kind of find a way out, because that could be months of your time.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I know they try and compensate you for pay, but I think it's laughable the amount of pay that they pick you, like what they reimburse you for or whatever. It's definitely not what I can make in a day at my work. But I mean, it's kind of, I hate to use this term civil duty, but it is almost kind of your civil duty to show up and appear and have an open mind, in my opinion. Like if they choose you, it's, something everybody has to do. You might as well go in and make the best of it, because there could be shitheads like me that go in there that don't care. You want everybody to have a fair trial. I think that's one of the things that makes America great. I know it's trumped up sometimes, and people don't get a fair trial, but I think it's your job to go in there and try and make it fair.
You say you don't care, but yeah, I bet you would care if you were there. I bet you would.
I probably would.
That sounded like some subliminal messages right there for Trump.
It's called a pun.
So speaking of jury duty, that's how you guys kind of got your start. Your co-host Justin went to a murder case as a juror, and you guys spoke about that on your very first episode. And from there, you guys started out doing a little bit of true crime here and there, cases, things like that. But you also did a lot of like controversial topics, types of episodes, which I really enjoyed. Do you guys, I know you do true crime mainly. Do you ever plan to throw in a few of those controversial topics type of episodes in the future at all?
Right? We do. But generally there is a crime element to them.
Okay.
Like we covered the death of Freddie Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Out of Maryland. I mean, literally the guy took off running, and a police officer chased him. And then they found a knife on him that they claimed was illegal. Although I took a look at it and thought, why would that be illegal? But, it's not my call. And then they put him in the back of a one of those they're like vans or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't actually secure him. They just handcuffed him and then let him sit loose in the vehicle. And then that some of these officers give these guys rough rides. So they take corners pretty hard and slam on their brakes. And somehow this guy had his head go into one of the bolts.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That would, that could do it. That could hit the
They're
lights out.
supposed to secure the prisoners. And this is the discussion that we had was that you're supposed to secure them for their safety. But it was only sent out as a memo. So there's actually no way to hold them responsible, because since it was just a memo, actually enforceable.
That's some shithead loophole right there.
It's pretty bad. And I don't know why we have to make excuses for why people die in custody, but that means things need to change. We need to care about everybody that goes into custody, because as soon as an arrest happens or you're pulled into custody, they should be responsible for you and for your safety. And if they're not, this is a really easy way for people just to get knocked off. And then the authorities can shrug and say, oh, well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big supporter of the police. I grew up in a family. My dad was a police officer for a long time. And like whenever these cases come out, as soon as I hear them, or I see them on TV or see them on Facebook or on Twitter, like I automatically take the blue side. You know, I'm defending the police officer and whatever happens, but I also have to sit down and start doing the research of whatever happened because, like you said, things like that happen. You don't necessarily hear that side of the story. And as being a police supporter, you know, I kind of let those things slip through and I don't even pay attention to them. And I think there is, you know, an issue with police brutality, but I think there is also an issue with victim brutality too, in a sense of like they, you know, if the cop tells you what to do, even if they're in the wrong, you know, just from my experience, even if the cop is in the wrong, if the cop has a gun pulled on you, don't mouth off, don't make sudden movements, don't do anything stupid that would give them the idea that you're about to try and hurt them to get yourself killed or, you know, whatever. I don't know much about the Freddie Gray story. I didn't even know he got hurt in the back of the car because that's how much I pay attention to the news lately. But uh, my big thing is if you get stopped, you know, follow their commands. Yeah, you know, there's cops out there that are dickheads and everybody has a bad day and they're going to abuse their power. But I feel like, you know, there's still the law. They're issuing commands. You need to comply. And then, you know, if you have charges you want to file later, or if you think they're being, you know, belligerent or, you know, over aggressive, you know, you can file charges and, you know, get that shit settled out in court or whatever you need to do. But I don't know. That's kind of my 2-bit is if you want to stay alive, do what they say.
Well, yeah, and at the end of all of this, we still need law enforcement officers. You know, there's no way around it. And their job is very difficult because there are people put these officers in danger or make their jobs very difficult. On the flip side, though, it's not really so much about backing the blue all the time because these officers are taking commands from officers that are higher up. So
Right.
there's a hierarchy there, and
Mm-hmm.
the buck stops at their police chief, really. And when things happen, the police chief, in my opinion, giving these officers good instructions on how to handle certain situations, um, because they're just following orders. And if they're taught this is how you do it, you just
Mm-hmm.
handcuff them and put them in there and close the door and then move on. Well, at that point, it's not really their fault. They're taking commands from above.
Right.
If they do an assault where they're punching the person that they've taken into custody, that's a different thing. But honestly, a lot of this stuff happens because someone higher up has some kind of policy that's not having a good rapport between the public and the police department, which is, I think, important because I think the more respect there is on both sides, the more cooperation we'll have.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, you know, with us having, you know, every phone has a camera, all of these things are being caught, you know, on camera, and there's footage of everything. Um, it kind of, you know, shows what can happen, and in this age of streaming, you know, Twitch streaming, for example, you know, big Twitch streamers, get swatted. Do you know what that is? Getting swatted?
Yes, there was a death not that long ago because of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is that the police officers go in there, you know, on a bomb threat. So they are already really tense, and that doesn't help the blue side at all with situations like that. And you know, other police departments hear about it, then they're tense when they go into any kind of situation like that, and it just kind of amps up the whole thing. And the more of these that get caught on footage, um, I think it only amps up certain police officers to you know pull the trigger before they should. Um, I'm not really sure how to get around that or fix it, but that's definitely an issue that needs to be looked at.
Well, it's a dangerous job.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but think some of these officers are just really nervous and they're put in a situation where they can make the wrong call.
So what is your views, or what are your views on the Second Amendment and like Castle Doctrine, like those kind of things? What kind of like what do you think of it?
Well, I'm not sure we could ever draft laws that will be perfect because you have general citizenry that are willing to be responsible. But then you have other people who say, oh, well, if I have this right, then I'm going to use it. And you'll have people just shooting someone in public because they think they're defending themselves. Somebody who's taken a training course will tell you that you're not supposed to be aggressive.
Right.
To
It's a
do
life-saving type thing, not a life-taking.
right, but you have people who want to be heroes, and or they're defending their rights. And there are some very angry people out there who don't look at the Second Amendment as a right. They look at it as the most important thing, which I think is kind of missing the point. But there are people who are very, very opinionated on this stuff, and like anything else, there are degrees of people's belief in these rights, and I just think we can get carried away, especially with all these shootings going on. There's just this sense that we can't really make any changes because you can't trample rights. People doubt whether any of the changes will actually work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, there's also other things like, how if you were to put some kind of gun control into law, there's states like Wyoming where there's 27 guns per one person in the state of Wyoming. Like, what are you going to go confiscate all of that? Like, then it doesn't take into effect any unregistered firearms. There's just even if it were to be banned completely, there's just no way of getting guns out of the wrong hands at this point. So I don't know if that's the right way to go with something like that. But I mean, of course, some people can disagree with that.
Well, I think it would work over time if you ban stuff now. Like, let's say they just banned the AR-15. Certainly, there are many out there
Mm-hmm.
buy, and some of those guns end up being auctioned off, or if someone dies and they get confiscated, they could be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I think it would have an effect. That seems to be one suggestion that people have. I don't know. I've talked to so many people about this, and everyone has a different idea. What do you got? What do you guys think about this putting guns in the hands of teachers plan that Trump was talking about?
Let me take this one because I'm a much more big Second Amendment advocate than Sin is. I think. And I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up around guns. I've always had guns. And as big of a Second Amendment supporter as I am, and as big of a concealed carry advocate that I am not comfortable necessarily with having teachers with firearms. And I get a lot of flack from a lot of people that I know that are just big gun buffs like me, and they get angry at me. And they're like, well, that's literally the only thing you can do. I'm like, look, okay, you have police officers that go through a decently long course that teaches how to deal with situations under pressure, and even the cops fail. I mean, that's obvious. It's all over the news all the time. Anytime somebody gets shot, it's the big deal. So somebody that's been through the training that is offered to the police departments, they still have issues handling things under pressure. I've been through 12 years of school. I don't remember all of them, but from what I do remember, most teachers that I had didn't handle stress very well. You'd have kids talking in class or, goofing off. And I remember teachers getting like blatantly just outright mad. I had a few teachers yell. And, if they can't deal with handling the pressure of a few kids, who's to say when somebody comes into a school to do a school shooting that, the teachers are going to do anything. And people are like, well, it doesn't matter if they, react or, try and save their life. All they have to do is sit there at their desk and, if they come through their door, they can handle it. They're not. They're not going to handle it. And
I mean,
there's a difference between being accurate at a firing range and then knowing there's a live shooter that has a bullet that fires back at you and is trying to kill you. And I think it's could cause more harm than it does good, in my opinion.
Yeah, and who's to say that um, a sociopath can't be a teacher to
Exactly.
get their hands on a gun, and one day they just go off, and they're the ones that cause the shooting. That's another thing that could happen. But my take on it is, for this Parkland shooting that just happened, there was a deputy there during the shooting, and he was outside smoking a cigarette, from what I read. I don't know if he showed up on scene during the shooting or if he was just already there, but it really comes down to I think training of these police officers to be able to handle a situation like that, to where that's what you sign up for in the police force. You sign up to protect people, and if the time comes that happens, you have to be prepared to take on that situation. You can't, the guy could have stopped it earlier. I mean, some deaths may have happened, but he didn't do anything. I mean, did you hear how the shooter got away, or how he got caught?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
No,
like
I have no
he
idea.
basically he threw his AR-15 down, and he ran out with the other kids fleeing as if he was one of the students. And then he went to McDonald's to get himself some food, because that's what kids do. And then they reported him at McDonald's. One of the employees called the cops, and they caught him there. But that's, it could have been stopped way earlier if the police officers on campus had taken initiative.
Did they
Well,
not did they not go to the scene where the shooting was happening? Like, did they not even go? I don't understand.
they
I'm
didn't
not.
enter the school, from what I understand. The officers
Yeah,
that showed up, they waited outside.
yeah, and that basically means, the shooting's going on inside. They're chilling outside, and it's happening. And then, you see all these kids running out. Obviously, the police officers aren't going to know the shooters in the crowd running out to go to
Right.
McDonald's or whatever. So it was just, from beginning to end, a shit show. And just in that specific situation for this specific shooting, a lot of deaths, I think, could have been prevented if they had taken initiative. Now for other ones, I'm not sure what an armed police officer could do on campus. I mean, the high school we went to, that me and Nathan went to, is huge. It's like a college campus. They would need multiple police officers, uh, armed security guards there to keep everything safe. But I think that's the way to go. I don't think teachers should have guns, because that's there's just some teachers that just by themselves, they're so jittery and just um I don't know the right word, I guess shy. I don't think they'd be able to handle a situation like that with a gun.
Well, let me float another idea past you, because one thing that I haven't heard you guys mention yet is that in a lot of these areas where these school shootings are happening, I'll bet you most of those teachers don't even like guns and wouldn't want one. So this is not an effective tool, because the teachers that would use them might be in Montana, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or somewhere else. I mean, so how are we going to help the situation by having, maybe, I don't know, this is just a guess, but maybe 60 teachers saying, "Oh, I'll carry a gun." I mean, a solution that kind of works across the entire country, not just few districts here and there.
Yeah, I don't know what they should do, honestly. I think that's probably the best option, those armed security guards. Um, that's the only solution I can think of.
Like, I've seen videos on YouTube. I'm sure anybody that's ever done research on these has probably seen them too. They have those little systems that they created that can lock a door to a door frame with all the different types of like door opening mechanisms that there are. Like, you can slide it over the little V hinge that opens. You can put it under the door and like lock it to the actual door frame to keep people from opening the door. Like, if they really want in, I'm sure they can get in. They can slam like a desk into the door and probably crack that thing open. But something to slow them down. Like, I don't understand why schools aren't investing in something that, when they go on to lockdown, shots get fired. The teachers have something that they're putting in front of the doors. They're closing the blinds and the windows. They're hiding, getting somewhere where, a shooter that can't hit them through a window, it feels like they're not taking the measures that they should be taking to prevent stuff like that.
Well, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. So I would imagine that the killer wouldn't do it while class is in session. I mean, it has happened in the past, and that would be a good safety precaution to take to get these doorstops. But if the shooter went in there in between classes when everyone's at their lockers, how are you going to stop that?
As soon as, it's partially the kids have to be paying attention and they have to know how to react. I don't know how I would have acted back in high school, but like I said, I grew up in a military family and a police family, and if I start hearing gunshots, I'm getting in the closest door and I'm getting out the closest window. Like I'm not fucking hanging around. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I'm sure that the kids did that too.
Well,
but
I think what happened at Parkland was he pulled the fire alarms, correct? And like everybody flooded into the hallway.
You can't prepare for that kind of stuff, I don't think. And they're going to have the upper hand because they know they're going to attack.
True.
yeah,
I don't know. My biggest thing is all the attention is going to the AR-15, and that's what they're pushing for the ban and all that kind of stuff. And anybody that knows anything about guns, yeah, those things do massive damage. They're built to kill. But if a kid wanted to really do damage, take a 22 caliber pistol and walk in. It's going to do the same thing. If they want to walk into a school and kill people, they're going to do it with whatever they got. They could use a sword, for Christ's sake, if they're flooding through the hallways.
Mhm.
I don't think it has anything to do with the specific gun. It's just with people that are mentally incapable, or there's something wrong. It doesn't matter the tool that they use. If they've got their mind set on killing people, they're going to do as much damage as they can do with whatever they have.
But as long as it's a political issue, you'll have two sides fighting against one another. And I'm not sure you'll see any progress in terms of trying to tackle the issue.
I
Probably
hate
not.
politics. Jesus.
So typically on this podcast, we talk to content creators, which you are one, as a podcaster. But typically we talk to Twitch streamers, YouTubers, things like that. So I want to kind of bring this question around to our topic: is do you think gaming in general, like playing violent video games, things like that, do you think that has any effect on someone's like mental capabilities on doing something like this?
Well, I don't know about that. One of my favorite comedians is David Cross,
Okay.
and he has a joke about this, about, what were those violent video games that Hitler was playing? I've also seen a movie. Have you seen that? Where this
What was it?
Aboriginal man finds a Coke bottle. I don't even know if he's Aboriginal. He might not be. But anyway, this man finds a Coke bottle, and to him, it's people have never had, And so he goes around and he discovers he can hit people with it,
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a violent tool. There were some kids that grew up in a neighborhood not far from me whose parents were very strict, and they would not allow them to have any toy guns or watch anything that involved any kind of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a relative go and visit them at one point, and the kids were literally chasing each other around with their fingers fashioned into guns, basically going boom, boom.
Right.
So I hate to say it, but inside all of us is some kind of a violent nature. And some of us, it may be very, very small, very easily controlled, and maybe just a thought where you're driving down the road and you just imagine someone's car exploding because you're a little angry at them. People just act
Guilty.
on their violence. And it doesn't, I don't think, I think you can session with that by all means, but I don't think it turns regular people into killers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I've been gaming for a long time, and most of the video games I play have some kind of violent aspect to them. But I mean, there's nothing in my mental capacity that could cause me to do something like that. So I don't think it has any effect on anything like that. But if you're inclined to do something like that, then yeah, it could probably help at that point. It could probably numb your, make you more and more of a sociopath, numb any feelings you have towards that to where you'd be able to do it without blinking an eye.
Yeah, I think that's my take on it too. Is if you're already having mental issues, you're already a violent person. You're taking medicine for it. You're seeing shrinks about it. Your parents are constantly having to correct you, or you just have a violent tendency. Uh, Not even a violent tendency, because a lot of these people are super quiet, in the background kind of people, I think. But if there's something mentally wrong, or like something, a few screws are loose, I think playing violent video games can set you up to, you know, finally make you like, well, I'm going to do this in real life kind of thing. I'm going to, take things back, and, I'm going to be the victor or whatever. I think that can have an issue. But at that point, those people are going to more than likely do it anyways. And I don't think video games have anything to do with it. That's kind of why I think if there's any kind of gun control that needs to go into effect, it needs to be, uh, you know, stopping people with mental capabilities, like mentally ill capabilities, from buying firearms. Like they need to loosen up the whole thing. Like if you go to a shrink, all that stuff seems to be, you know, confidentiality agreements between the shrink and the person. But if you're going to a shrink and you have violent tendencies in there or whatever, that stuff needs to be reported to the ATF, the FBI, whatever. And if you go in to buy a firearm and you're seeing a shrink and they're telling the government that you've talked about killing people, you should not be able to buy a gun. It should be a red flag. And I'm sorry. Like if I were to go crazy in public one day and they wrote me up that I'm, a psych case, I shouldn't be able to buy a gun ever again either. That's just my viewpoint. I don't know if that would help, but I feel like that's one of the things that need to progress.
That's actually a very left-wing view of you. I mean, that's what the left wants is that kind of gun control.
I am fine with that kind of gun control. I don't mind a 3-day waiting period to buy a gun, because I think their ideology is, it gives you time to cool off. I'm fine. There's not a time I've ever went and bought a gun and was like, man, I need to have that this day. Like, I can understand why people are pissed about it and whatnot, but to me personally, it's not like if I, go to buy a new handgun, it's not something I haven't shot before, not something I haven't, did my research on. It's not something I have to have right then. I don't know, something has to be done, and I don't think banning a specific gun is the way to go. They need to figure out how to limit it in the hands of mentally ill people.
Yeah.
Well, the other problem is you can limit their access to purchasing firearms.
Mhm.
But as you know, many of these school shootings happen because someone has gotten access to guns that a relative has.
Right.
And I will
Yeah.
say it right here. I think a lot of this is just coming down to people not properly storing and securing their firearms. And if they want to keep that up, eventually the government will have to do something about it.
Right,
Take,
like I can
you
agree
know,
with that.
it's going to, what it comes down to is you just literally need to be more responsible.
Hmm.
But if we have a lot of irresponsible people and people are dying because of it, well, that right's going to go out the window. The other thing I don't understand is we have to go to get licensed to have car.
Hmm.
And for a firearm, you don't really need to do that. And I think it's all well and good to say this is my right, but damn, this wouldn't be a bad thing to have people go through training and actually get educated on firearms if they're going to own them.
Hmm.
But like I said, if we keep getting people who don't know how to take care of their firearms, then yeah, down the road they might just lose them.
Yeah, and that's actually the argument to that. Exactly what you just said is, people that compare, having a license for a vehicle to getting a gun. The the most common answer that I get back from someone that I suggest something like that is that carrying a firearm is a right, while driving a vehicle is a privilege. So in that sense, they feel like a right shouldn't have to have anything blocking you from getting one. And I disagree. I think
There's context here, and the context has changed, and that's because it used to be that vehicles, a reason for someone being killed, and now the guns have really caught up and maybe even surpassed vehicle deaths now. So it's gotten pretty serious.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And for people is to step outside their own, um, what would you say, own philosophies, own ideologies, solution, because usually we're kind of pigeonholed and we'll say, well, I can't go with this answer because it's against my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
I think the fear of it is like it has been in the past. I can't quote specific examples, but it's kind of like one of those slippery slope things. And I think the slippery slope is what keeps, the gun-toting Americans from, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. Because I think most of them are afraid of if we budge and we let them do this, once that snowball gets rolling, we're not going to be able to stop it, and it's going to end up at total gun control. And I think that thought in the head is what keeps most people from actually dissecting the situation and thinking about it, because that scares the shit out of me, because like I said, I'm a huge gun toting advocate, because I want the right to defend myself anywhere I go. I may piss my pants and not do anything when the situation occurs, but I want to have the ability to defend myself, my wife, from an intruder, or if I'm at the gas station and it's getting robbed, if I'm inside and you point that gun at me, I want the chance to point a gun back at you. So I'm afraid, like, if I start leaning towards those gun control laws and start advocating for it or pushing for it, and, if something happens, when does that slippery slope stop? And once it gets going, how do we stop it?
Well, you're presuming that that's what it would be. Um, I wonder if the slippery slope thing isn't just being advanced by people who don't want any control over guns.
And that could be, like, I mean, I can see that, but
That
I
is to
guess
get
I'm
anywhere on this issue in Congress, right?
right.
So I don't really perceive or foresee a slippery slope here, ban. But I mean, I do think something needs to happen, and the public is waiting for something to happen because they're saying, "Look what's going on about this," and then we have either side of the aisle yelling at the other.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When it comes uh to that part, the people in the media that are, crying for the gun control. The thing is from what I've seen, it's a bunch of 16 and 17-year-old snot-nosed kids that are, laying on the White House lawn or whatever they've been doing. Those kids aren't even old enough to own a firearm. They don't know what life is. Why is a 16, 17-year-old allowed to cry and dictate what I can and cannot do? That's what's really annoying me out of the situation, I guess.
Well, they're getting involved.
Yeah.
You know what I was going to say, you know what they all need?
What's
They
that?
need a little bit of Generation Y to open their eyes.
I'll tell you one thing though, that you brought up that I agree with, which is we covered a case for a premium episode, Josephine County 911, and there's this county where literally the government was saying we need to raise taxes or we're not going to have a police department.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you know.
Yeah.
And so this woman's her ex-boyfriend showed up and started smashing her car and then started trying to smash through the door to get to her.
Oh my God.
And she's on the phone and the woman's
Mhm.
like, "I'm sorry, I've got no one to send to you. You don't
Jesus,
understand.
that's
When he gets in
scary.
here, I'm in trouble." And she's like, "Do you have a gun?" And the woman said, "No, I don't." She goes, "Can you get in a closet?" And she's like, "That's not going to stop him." Broke in and he assaulted her, he raped her. And could hear on the 911 call that the dispatcher and an officer later were kind of laughing about it. Like, I don't know what they expect us to do, you know?
Oh my
Um,
God.
but we checked into this, and this is something that a lot of people don't know, but the police have no responsibility to defend you.
Right.
Right.
That I think is a major problem. Now, I understand how it protects officers because they could be sued if they don't protect you in time. But
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side, how are you going to protect yourself if you don't have the means to do so?
Right.
In that situation where they kind of need a weapon if they're worried about protecting themselves, because at least then they'd have a fighting chance. She had no real physical chance to fight this guy if he got in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard another story of, in rural areas, there was this woman that was with her baby. Um, and she called the police and they're like, well, we can get out there, but it's going to be a while because it's a rural area. And there's two guys trying to, you know, break down her door. Thankfully, she asked the police officer, she's like, hey, I have a shotgun. Am I able to use it? And, at that point, the dispatcher or the operator would say, I can't, I can't tell you to do that, but you have to do whatever you can to defend yourself. Well, she defended herself. I mean, she got the shotgun, she shot the two guys. And that's just one of those situations where you hear a story like that, where she could have been raped and killed to killing the intruders, which um, there's something about that that just makes me really happy that we have a right like that to protect yourself if it came down to that situation and police can't get to you. Which what's the average wait time for emergency vehicle to get to you? Like 12 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I was going to say it's more than 10, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long time, especially if you don't call until they're already beating down your door. 12 minutes is a long time
Yeah.
for
So
someone to
can
be able to do something.
let me bring this back around to true crime though. You asked earlier at the beginning between true crime and the scripted crime. Well, this is another way to illustrate that, which is if you're watching a scripted show, I don't know about you, but we're invested. Like I might appreciate the story and kind of enjoy the movie I'm watching, but
Mm-hmm.
if I'm into a true crime story, this is happening to real people. Invested. And then you have the debate afterward. Was this guy guilty? No, I don't think so. Or yeah, he totally did it. Or, look what she did here. Get into a real conversation about real issues, and it can spiral out into constitutional rights or certain police policies or whatever it is. And it just seems to have more weight, all of it.
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, that's why I really appreciate what you guys do so much. And any podcasts, true crime podcasts that I listen to, is that I get that experience. I get that, I get that deep thought after an episode is over, to where I can sit down and think about it. And in my mind, like you said, it spirals out into all these other issues, and it kind of all ties together, are all around the same thing. Guns, mentally ill, not getting guns, the helping the mentally ill in this country, like things like that. It all comes together, and that's why I think it's important that things like your podcast get listened to. To be honest, I mean, I really believe that it helps people be introduced to something like that, because so many people have their eyes shut to issues out there like this, and just because they're not publicized until unless it's a mass shooting, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, there aren't always answers. Um, we can look at the Leochi case and say it was probably the mom, just given the lies that she told and um, some of the issues she was facing that she couldn't answer. She failed 3 lie detector tests, which, those aren't always accurate, but these were conducted by 3 different analysts
Mm-hmm.
at 3 different times. So that's pretty crazy. But just like with the gun control thing or the shootings, um, really the only way I think that would be a very expensive solution, which is run our schools like the airports. You'd have to have all the kids go through the detectors, armed security at the only way in. That sounds crazy and it sounds expensive, but airports, they're pretty safe. Don't you feel safe when you go to the airport?
Yeah.
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 I mean, things have happened in airports.
Yeah.
A lot less than school shootings, though, I
Yeah.
feel.
I mean, I gotta say, when it comes to that, I was in 2016. I visited Moscow, Russia, because my brother was getting married, and I can tell you that that's the exact kind of vibe that they're going for. I felt almost every building I went into, my hotel, stores, shops, public uh, buildings, things like that. Anything you go into, there's a guy at the front with a wand that's wanding you down before you get into the building, like everywhere. It felt like a militarized state in a way. I mean, of course, the guy didn't, he wasn't wearing like a military uniform, but still, you're being wanded down everywhere. And I don't have the statistics on hand with Russia or anything, so I'm not sure how effective that is. But I can say for me, I don't know if I felt safer or not, but I definitely felt uneasy having those people wand me going everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
But really, on our show, we try to cover, especially lately, we've been covering a lot of mysteries. What happened to this person? Why weren't they found? Or who killed them? And that's true for next week as well. Our newest episode that will be out.
Yeah, I've noticed like the was it the Abraham Shakespeare episode? Wasn't that another one with kind of an open ending? I don't remember the end of that one.
Actually, that one was not an open ending because
That was the one where he was found under the slab of concrete, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Her lawyer, this is a man who won the lottery, and there was a woman who hated being poor.
Mm-hmm.
She saw in him the opportunity to get some money, and he ended up going missing. And then she started using his phone to communicate with people by text and by email to act like he was still around. And then she would tell everyone different stories. So, like his ex girlfriend, she would say, "Well, he's off with some other woman now."
Oh my
And
god.
she would tell the man's mother, "Oh, well, he needs to be away from everyone because everyone was going after him because of the money." And then she would hang out with his mom, despite
Oh,
the
what a
fact that she had
creep.
murdered him and put him underneath a concrete slab.
Ugh.
Yeah, that episode, I don't know what it was. It was just the whole story of that episode. I really enjoyed that one. Out of like the last 10, that would probably be my number one. It was a really interesting episode about the guy winning the lottery. And, I've always thought about that, like when someone wins the lottery, if it's in any way public to the people around you, someone's going to want a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lot of people are going to want a piece.
Yeah,
And
Nathan will want a piece.
I want
yeah,
a piece.
Nathan will want a piece, and I won't give you a piece, and then you're gonna put
I'll
me
come
under a
find
concrete
you.
slab. And you're gonna start texting from my phone.
Oh, I would too.
That'd be kind of hard with my girlfriend.
But it's tough. And also in that story, he had a very close friend that he worked with said, "Hey, that's my ticket," and they went to court over it.
Oh
And
man.
before they went to court, told him, "Hey, just take 250 grand and we'll call it even."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, "No way. That's my millions of dollars." So they went to court and the guy ended up with nothing and they weren't friends after that.
Okay, so if I won
Relationships.
if I won a $200 million lottery,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, all right, Aaron, all right, Nathan, I'm gonna give you guys 250K. Just don't ask me for more money. Would you actually be pissed?
Hell no, I'd take that in a heartbeat.
I don't know. The funny thing is it depends how much money you have. If I had 100 million, I think I'd so I do the show with Justin. If I won 200 million dollars, I'm sure they take a big chunk out for taxes, but
Yeah.
I would give him more than 250K.
Oh,
A
of
lot
course,
more.
but I'm
you
just saying.
stingy ass.
I'm just saying, like, I'm just using the same amount that was in the case.
Yeah. It's difficult though. Some people can't be too generous. And one thing that surprised me was I read recently that George Clooney invited all of his groomsmen over to his house for dinner. He'd gotten married some time back, And then these were all like his best buddies. And some of them were wealthy guys. Some were like Joe Schmoes, had no money, but he grew up with them. And when he invited him to dinner, everybody had like a satchel in front of them at the table. And he made all of them wait until he was ready. And then he said, I want you to open the bags in front of you. Each one of these satchels or whatever it was had $1 million in it.
Oh my God.
There were like 14 friends at the table. And
Wow.
Wouldn't that be nice?
just like overwhelmed, like, oh my God, are you serious? And then one of his buddies is very wealthy. And he said, I don't need your $1 million. And he said, you have to take it or no one can take theirs.
Oh,
So
no.
think of what to do with it. And he eventually figured out, oh, wait, I could donate it to charity. But it took him a while,
Wow.
because he thought $1 million wasn't even anything. He's just like, why are you giving this to me?
God.
Thought it was cool
living-
that George was giving his buddies all, you know what he said was, he said, I wouldn't be where I'm at without all of you because each of you contributed to my success.
Yeah. Like if I had the money he did, I think I would do the same stuff. I mean, like I would do that kind of stuff all the time, and I would make people take it. Like there's no one denying me giving you $1 million. I don't care how rich you are. That's a gift,
Sounds crazy, but I really believe that some of our issues can be solved by just being nice and by showing
Absolutely.
appreciation. And I read an article not that long ago too, where a lot of these loner people that end up becoming violent and killing people, they didn't really have people stopping and just asking how they were. And they would wander through a school and people would just either ridicule them or ignore them. And I wonder how much it would cost us just to stop and say, hey, man, how's it going?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I recently finished a book called Tribe, and in that book, I mean, it says how the human species is a tribal species, and how they're much happier in small societies, of like 150 people, where kind of everyone knows each other, and that makes a lot of sense. That a loner will kind of go crazy without that societal touch. If they're not close to anybody, if they don't have someone to call their best friend, if they don't have someone to call their significant other, those things can definitely weigh down on those people to get to that point in their life where they would cause something like that. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
I'd say give them a reason not to hurt you.
Right.
I mean, how much does that cost?
Kill them with
Yeah.
kindness. Words are free.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like a grassroots thing we could try, because waiting on the government to do something, well, I think we're going to be waiting a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Aaron for public office.
Oh, hell no.
He said hell no.
Oh, hell no.
I'd end up in last place in a one-person race. Yeah. I'd have 0 votes.
I'm gonna run on my true crime platform.
There's some people that really like my point of view on the show, but yeah, I wouldn't vote for me. And that's only because I'm not a leader, I don't like leading people. I'm very into the individual, and I don't really like telling a bunch of people what to do personally.
Mhm.
How I look at things.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go into our random thought of the day segment to kind of close out the show here. So today I have a pretty weird thing that's been happening to me lately, and I've actually talked to Nathan about it. It's happened to him before, and it's happened to a few of my other friends. And I want to ask if it's happened to you. So lately, like a few months ago, I got the flu. I was sick. I didn't look up anything on my computer. I was just talking to my girlfriend about it in voice, not through text, nothing like that. So I'm just talking to her about it. I get on my computer, I get on Facebook, scroll down a little bit. The first few ads have to do with like flu medicine. And I have no idea like who's listening to me or whatever, but I don't know if it's like a conspiracy, but like that happens to me all the time, where I could even be thinking something and, talk to my girlfriend about it, and it'll pop up on my Facebook feed as an ad.
Yes. So you're surprised by this?
I'm not surprised by it in a way. Like, I know things like that are happening, but like, has that happened to you?
Information is money. You know that, right?
Yeah.
And this country is very much a capitalist country. So being spied on, then it's really to make someone money. They're not like trying to track you down so they can get you. I mean,
Oh, I know. And I
buying
mean,
habits are, and then how to sell it to you, that's worth way more to the people in charge than how to get you.
yeah. And I mean, that's what all those rewards cards are for every store you go to. They're literally seeing what you like to buy, and they're getting more information out of you, out of their consumers. Everything is just an information grab. And I know no one reads those agreement like terms and conditions when you sign up for email or sign up for Facebook or Twitter or any of those things, but I'm sure it's in all of those that they can grab whatever information they want from you at any time.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about defending yourself against the federal government. I mean, you've probably already okayed an agreement that you're theirs, you know?
Yeah, I'm probably already
Before it even
microchipped, like ready to
started.
go.
So I hate to break it to you, but yeah, that's just how it is.
I'm sure when I moved to the United States in 1998, they just injected me with a microchip, and I already
I'm
have it
sure.
in me. I just don't know.
Started doing it.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I wish you and Justin the best on the podcast. Also, you have a podcast coming out called Framed. Tell listeners a little bit about that, what it's going to be.
It's on a single case, and it will be covered in about 10 to 12 episodes. We have every available document to study case. We believe we can solve it. And well, you'll just have to tune in to find out if we do. But again, that we really feel like we can solve this case and answer the question of who killed this guy and why.
So are these going to be unsolved murders on this podcast and that you guys are solving?
Well, isn't right now, but it will just be on one case. Well, it'll just take 10 to 12 episodes to go through all the evidence and lay the case out. So as you go week to week, you'll be following along trying to figure it out.
Oh, okay, but you guys will probably already have the answer, right? I'm assuming.
Hopefully.
Well, like I asked, like I don't know if these are unsolved cases or if they're a case that's already solved and you guys are like laying it out, letting the viewers try and figure it out as the weeks go. Is that the drift I'm getting?
Generation Y is usually a new case every week, and Framed will be on the same one for a number of episodes. So, yeah, people will tune in and they'll try and figure it out before it ends. But I think the way we have it planned out, it should make it pretty interesting. And I'm not working with Justin on this one. I'm working with someone else, but
Is he mad?
oh, the second podcast, which I really like. And if you haven't heard it, it's The Peripheral. And what I like about it is it's real conversations. It's almost like Joe Rogan in a way, except Justin is covering topics that are a little off.
Okay.
That's divorced themselves from their entire family, their parents and their siblings, or someone that used to be an alcoholic, or someone who works in the sex industry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
All
I'll
right.
be
Well,
listen.
so all of you guys out there should definitely check out the Generation Y podcast, check out The Peripheral, and we can expect Frame probably out in the next few weeks to a month. I don't know exactly when your release date is. Do you have an official release date, or you just kind of still?
I'm waiting on the hosting, and I'm hoping that I can get that ironed out this week, and then I can get started on it next week. But yeah, it's a work in progress, and there's a lot yet to be done. But we're this will be a scripted show, so it's taking some time to write it all out and plan it.
Right.
We have a number of episodes kind of ready to go in terms of script and audio files, so it's a matter of putting them together too.
I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. So if you guys go there, leave them a good review and tell them we sent you, so they know. All right, guys. Please check out the Actions Per Minute Network at actionsperminute.net to check out our website. You can email us at coldonepodcast@gmail.com if you want to contact us directly. Make sure and follow us on Twitter and Facebook, which is both at Cold One Podcast, so you know when new episodes are up. And lastly, please go to iTunes or whatever podcast app you use and like and subscribe to the Cold One with the Boys. Thanks, guys, and we will see you next week.
Later.
Later.
Yeah.